Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Blueprint, our monthly podcast where we pull back the curtain and update everyone on all the things that are happening with our building campaign here at Christ Church in Bowling Green. I'm your host, Michael Romans, and I'm so glad that you're back with us tuning in this month. If you've driven past our property here on Cave Mill Road lately, you might look out across our campus and think, hey, there's nothing happening yet. And if we're being completely honest, that quiet phase here in our building process can sometimes create a little anxiety and make us wonder what's happening behind the curtain. You know, what are the things that are happening in the closed rooms that we're not all sitting in. But as anyone in construction can tell you, the most critical foundational work happens long before the heavy equipment ever rolls onto the lot. And that's where we're at right now. We're at that very early stage in this project. We want to walk through this journey with you with complete transparency, clarity, and excitement so that you know that your gifts and your generosity are being stewarded with extreme care. You can always follow along with updates and photos and FAQs by heading over to our website, christchurchbg.org/build. And if you don't want to remember all that, you can just go to christchurchbg.org, and at the top of every page, you will see a building project link that will take you to that website. And this podcast will be there. Our monthly emails will be there. And there's a chance for you to ask FAQs there, and they will come into podcast or emails a little later. Today, I'm joined by two of the leaders who are living in the details of this process every single week. First, our senior pastor, Matt Seel, is here with me, who continues to lead our congregation with vision, wisdom, and deep pastoral care through every season of growth. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Glad for the opportunity to spend some time talking with you all and just recognizing the season that we're in. We've had a busy season of raising funds and going. And now we're leaning into a season of learning and discerning together. And I'm excited about that.
Thank you, Matt. Secondly, we have our building team chair, Preston Withers, here with us. Preston brings decades of hands-on architectural, project planning, construction, and local infrastructure experience right here in Bowling Green to our church family, and we're so blessed by his thoroughness and leadership on this committee. Preston, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Glad to be here. Thank you for the invite. Glad to share the update on where we're at and where we're headed, and very excited for the directions we're going.
Excellent. Thank you, Preston. Matt, for many of us, once a pledge drive wraps up, we naturally want to see shovels in the dirt immediately. How are you pastoring our congregation through this season of waiting and foundational preparation?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is thank you to everyone who's given. We brought in just over $2 million, which is around 3 times our annual budget, which is twice as much as we kind of were hoping for and expecting in our pledge drive. So I want to continue to thank you all for your generosity in that way. As I mentioned, we're entering now into a season of learning and discerning. We've got to, as with anything, get a firm grasp on the things that we can know, and knowing that as we continue to learn about the different ways to go about this process, what way is going to be best for us and make the most sense for our congregation. As with anything, I like to get as many of the answers figured out as I can before I take the next step. And I think in this process, as we think about what those next steps might be, as much information as we can get now will help us later, and it will help us, I think, make decisions when maybe there isn't a clear, definite path, yes or no. Again, taking time to work through this helps the church stay unified. It helps us to be mindful with the resources we have received, and it helps us from making any mistakes that might cost us more in the long term. And we want to try to avoid all of these things if we can.
Yeah, I think one of the themes that you're going to hear, that you're going to hear over and over in this month's show, because it was so prominent in our meeting this month, is just that simple idea that at this stage, we want to make sure we're doing things well, not that we're doing things fast. We're going to be living with this building for 60, 70, 80, God willing, 150 years, and so let's make sure we get these early details in a way that makes sense, not just for today, but for the long term of our ministry here. Preston, let's talk a little bit about numbers and stewardship. We've collected nearly $200,000 in actual donations already That includes $3,400 that was earned in interest, give or take $3,400, against more than, as Matt said, $2 million in pledges. How does having cash on hand right now here at the beginning help us handle this initial architectural and planning expenses without the need for early debt?
Well, thank you to the congregation for allowing us to have the money, and those that pledged, that donated the physical cash for us to use. It helps us to take care of upfront costs, surveying costs, possibly work or fees that we have to do at the planning commission, fees that we'll do maybe with the building review once we get further down the line. All of those front end costs of surveying, resurveying the property, getting things outlined with a few firms to start their initial work, like civil engineering, and get their down payments. And that upfront cost helps decrease the debt on the back end to allow us to have a small as possible low interest rate on a construction loan for the remaining balance.
Right. Yeah. I think the full expectation that there will be some debt on this
Yes,
project, and we don't know exactly what that'll look like yet, but we do know that just simple banking, the longer that we have donations coming in that we're receiving interest on by we have them invested until we can spend them, the less time we're paying interest, the better off we are, in the long scale of things. So again, like both of you have said, thanks to everybody who have already began making donations toward those pledges. If you haven't done so yet, now is probably the time to begin that. We are in the midst now of gathering actual funds. We know what the promises are. Now we're gathering the actual funds as we begin this work together. Preston, the building committee decided at our last meeting to issue what's called a request for qualifications, or an RFQ, either for an architectural firm or perhaps for like a design bid build sort of situation. Why is an open RFQ process so important for transparency, and what are we looking for in these partners?
Well, we're looking for, one, their experience, what they've previously done, some references of good experiences, not the bad experiences, and so we can evaluate who is the most qualified to help us in this phase of our project. We previously had an architect we turned to a lot, but he has since passed away. So we're reinventing the wheel and reaching out to all of those firms and seeing if they're interested. And then once they submit them in, we'll start to evaluate what they are, their expertise and their performance, and what we've excluded, we're kind of leaving out civil engineering because we're going to pull out some things to decrease the costs, to prevent markups. We're going to pull those out and minimize our costs and work with them and have them work them together.
Sure. And I think part of what you're hitting on is so important as well, because that open invitation for folks to put in their qualifications with this RFQ. We have a great team on this building team, but even with a great team, our connections are limited. So somebody in the church may know somebody who would do a really great job, and that we just don't know about them. So this is also their opportunity to say, hey, why don't you put in an RFQ and then we can look at it. Now we're not making promises to anybody through this process. We're going to assess them, and it's going to be based on, like you said, what are the actual qualifications, what are the experiences been, obviously what are the costs, but it's not just cost, not just cheapest.
No, it's not. No, and we're just evaluating the firm itself.
Right.
Then we'll come back and select a few and work on negotiating that. We've had a few church members reach out and give us a few connections, which has been very helpful, and we're proceeding on with those.
Excellent. Thank you, Preston. And even as we talk about this, and I'm saying request for qualification, RFQ, and I want to acknowledge that I don't have a background in this. So in our building team meetings, I've been kind of feverishly taking notes over what you all are saying, because there's a lot of jargon that goes on here that's kind of insider language. If we want to talk Methodism, I can make your head spin with acronyms, or even if you go back to my time at the Social Security office, acronyms everywhere. But I'm still getting up to speed, with building acronyms, and I'm sure a lot of folks who are a part of our church feel that same way. We've talked about RFQ, which you just explain, but we've also talked about design, build, bundles, design and hard bids, design, bid, build, right? So can you explain just in like regular everyday language, Preston, kind of what the difference is in some of those and why it looks like our building team may be leaning toward one or the other right now?
Well, traditionally, for those that have not been at Christ Church before, all of our projects have always been a design, bid, build. We would design it, put it out to bid, and get a contractor hired on board. That's the way we've always done it. That's the traditional way. That allows us to design it, get it to where we want, and then we put it out to bid to get the best competitive number possible that they give us, and then we evaluate their proposal with their price to select the contractor to move forward.
Okay, well, let me check my thinking here then, Preston. Is that the same as what some people would refer to as an architect with hard bids?
Yes.
Okay.
It's an architect with hard bids, as someone would say.
Okay.
That's how we've done it, not necessarily how we might. We're still kind of discussing that, but that's the typical way that most people do it. If it's pretty straightforward and simple, most people do it that way to minimize their cost. And then there's pros and cons. The pros is we got our design and we're in control of it. The con is it may take a little longer than normal. And it might be, but it's never been at this church over budget. It's been a very blessing that we've never done that. Had an issue in trying to get our design under budget. The design build process is you bring a contractor with an architect together. They formulate a design. They are trying to speed up the process by eliminating just the design board. They put it together and then they start bidding what the design is that they come up with. And then of course we get a little feedback, but they're pretty much in control of the process. So they put all of that together and they bid it amongst themselves as a subcontractor. If the general contractor has the drawings, he sends it out to all the subs that do mechanical, HVAC, and they start working on that. There's limited control for what we want. If we probably want to make some changes, depending on the time frame these changes are made, there is no cost, but if it's out and being physically built and there's changes, then there's possibly more costs associated with that change and that. That has a little bit of, that's their partnership together. And we, that's roughly the quick version of the design build versus the design bid build.
Okay. Yeah, Preston, from a layman's perspective, again, without a background in this, to me, and this is extremely reductionistic, I understand that, but kind of what I hear you saying is there's a balance that has to be done here between, on one hand, maybe efficiency, handing it off, and somebody else is in charge of like running with it, and control over the process, which, as you said, maybe a little slower, but maybe you're happier at the end because you had more say-so in it, and figuring out for us where the right place is. And that's still the process we're in right now. Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair.
Excellent.
That is very much fair.
Thank you. Pastor Matt, Juanita Cox and some other team members have been coordinating site visits to local churches. In fact, they just wrapped this up this past week, but they've been to churches like Cumberland Trace, Rich Pond Baptist, East Side, which is currently putting up a structure in Plum Springs. What are we hoping to learn from these visits to other facilities before finalizing our own blueprints?
Yeah, so I think it's always wise to see what other people are doing, to learn from them, kind of the process they went through, learning how they set up teams within their church to make sure that things ran smoothly. You get an opportunity to see what people did that you were like, wow, that's a really good idea. We never thought of that before. Maybe we want to incorporate that. Other times we might see they're doing something that we were thinking about doing. And so that's affirmative. We're getting some of that affirmation thinking, yeah, that was a really good idea. we're on the right track. So it's always good to get that information. And it's been so far really, really positive interacting with these other churches. They've been so helpful with that. The other aspect of this is getting to actually see brick and mortar, right? So it's easy to say we want something that's around maybe 15,000 square feet, but then when you start to think of how big or small that looks when you're actually in the room, that looks different. And you walk in a room and it may seem bigger than you thought, or it may seem smaller than you thought. So getting to see some of that, seeing some of the finishing touches maybe that they made, or just seeing where they are in that process and how things are running or smoothly, or maybe they're not running smoothly. It just kind of depends on that. With our sanctuary that we're looking to build, we're looking to do 2 different types of service in one space. So what are some of those acoustical things that we're going to need to be mindful of and aware of? How do we share space? And how have some congregations that are sharing space, how are they doing that? And what are the processes they have for that? Along with that, traffic flow, where are people walking and how are they exiting, how are they entering? And then just being mindful of, we have an intention of what this space will be, but maybe it looks a little different down the road. And so again, just learning while we're discerning as we continue to process through this.
You know, there's a lot to learn. Like you pointed out a lot of the positive things that we're learning, but of course there's also the negative, which is, learning what were your pitfalls, right? What did you not see in advance that you could really help us now? And I think people have been very forthcoming and very, very helpful in that way as we begin to get our heads around so much of this. Preston, you've recently scheduled an informational meeting with the City County Planning Commission regarding our conditional use permit. Why are we having these utility zoning and safety conversations so early in the process?
We're having them early to know what may or may not need to be adjusted to move forward. So we're ready for when the contractor's ready, when we're ready to physically start moving dirt, we can cut loose and we don't have everybody out there with bulldozers going, okay, we're waiting on City County Planning Commission to finish what they need to review. So we started that conversation. It was very helpful. And we're looking at a couple of options to not only for just this project, for down the road, for the growth of the church, to be prepared with the City County Planning Commission in terms of our property at the moment is rezoned in 3 different phases, or 3 different areas. I'm sorry. So up front we have single family zoning where our parking lot is. And the lot coverage for single family is very minimum because it's single family. It's not designed commercial. So we've got to work on that. The proposed location for the sanctuary is in the ag section, which is perfect. It's got lots of room, but not very much. And then the rest of the property is zoned multifamily. So we're going to evaluate what is best. Do we rezone our property to accommodate being permitted? Because the difference in the Planning Commission is a conditional use permit is allowed in a certain area on a condition. The part of their zoning is you can be in this area and you're permitted to be here, just along with other use groups that you see in the community. When that is that case, then we don't have to necessarily go back to them every time we make a change. And we don't have to get a waiver. We don't have to get a $330 waiver to add a porch or something. We can just add the porch. So we're looking at that now that we've had that conversation. And then the other conversation that we'll have once we get further into the design is we're going to meet. They do a wonderful thing now after all these years is they bring in BGMU, Warren Rural Electric, or Warren County Water, Atmos. They bring all the utility companies and they bring them into a room. I think it meets twice a month. You can show them your preliminary design. They'll look at it and say, well, you've got water here, you've got this here, this is coming here. This is not adequate. We'll have to fix this to get you to what you want in terms of where we're going to sprinkle, where we are proposing right at the moment to sprinkle our side of the building, the new addition. by doing a separation between the buildings with a firewall, so where we can save on our church insurance, make that a little bit better, hopefully. And so all of that information is good to be forward, because you'd hate to be, you've just done all of the design work, you got it all ready, and there's no water. There's not adequate water. There's not adequate sprinkler system, but we've designed it. But the guys, when they do their design work, will catch that. I'm not saying it will actually physically happen at the end, but you never know.
Right.
So all of that is why we're having that early conversation. So, and we learned a little bit about our PDO at the moment is primarily the conditional use permit holder, back in 1993 or so, I think. So we learned some interesting facts about that, and we're gonna, while we're going through this process, we're gonna talk to the PDO committee and see if they want to make any adjustments while we're there to bring it up to the
Sure,
current
because
standards.
even as we're building something new, it's for the overall ministry of the church and how all of these things kind of come together, in one place. A lot of questions that still have to be answered, and that really brings us to what we've been talking about a lot this week. I guess it is really the theme, which is during our last meeting, someone had said that you can't order a church building on Amazon, right? This isn't something that can just be delivered next day. This is a longer process. Now, we're not trying to drag it out. Nobody wants that. But again, we want to do it right. Looking at these selections that we need to be making, Preston, the municipal approvals, bidding, what do you think is a realistic timeline for seeing actual groundbreaking on the property? And even before you answer to that, I just want to say, I'm going to look at the camera and say, this is a guesstimate, right? We're too early to say on such and such date we're breaking ground. These are not a promise, but we are beginning to think what could happen, what's realistic. We have no control over markets. Things change. We understand that. But as we stand right now, Preston, what do you think is a realistic timetable for us to get to actually breaking ground here?
Well, hopefully the summer or spring of 2027 is what our realistic, hopeful goal is. We're working to, here in the next several months by the fall, have someone on board to start working on schematics, start doing some design work, either get it ready to be built or bid out maybe during the winter time, because it's winter. We don't want to cause more disturb ground in the middle of the winter with us still occupying the building. And then maybe hopefully in the early spring we start, or maybe sometime during summer. The other part of the equation will be the availability of the contractor to start. That will be a part of the promise. We've heard from some of the other churches, they didn't quite start when they were planning to start. So
yeah, in a lot of ways we're at their mercy. We're going to pick a good contractor, we're going to pick a good architect, or however that process goes. But at the end of the day, we're not going to be the only job they have. And if something goes sideways at another place, it may affect us downstream, right? We get in the queue with these contractors, and then they get to us as efficiently and as well as they can. But we want them to do a really great job for us, which means we also want them to do a really great job for whoever else they're working for, right?
yes.
We want to make sure everybody's blessed, and a good contractor, a good architect, they're going to be busy, because when you're good at something, people find out about it. So, you brought up an interesting point there that I think I would want to bring into the conversation here. We received our first FAQ through our website, which I was really excited about, that somebody actually went to our website, christchurchbg.org/build, and they put in the Ask a Question. And that question had to do with Operation Christmas Child. Just last week, we celebrated in the church how this church has been dedicated to that ministry for such a long time, and we do such a good job with it. And there was some concern, will we be able to continue this? And what I hear you saying is that most likely, and again, most likely, we will not be far enough along this winter to have any effect on Operation Christmas Child. Probably this winter,
Yes.
that will just work like it always has.
Yes.
And I would think, I don't want to overextend myself because I haven't taken this to the lead team and asked, but I feel like we're dedicated to this ministry. And if next winter there have to be some traffic adjustments because we're in construction, which does sound likely, we'll figure that out when we get there. I think it's everybody's intention to continue with that wonderful ministry that we've partnered with. I think that's fair to say. Well, Matt, as we kind of draw to the end of our time here, and as we look toward these next foundational months, how can our church family be actively partnering with our building committee in prayer right now?
So I think there are three big things for us to think about, three areas specifically that we can be praying around. The first one is discernment and wisdom in selecting the appropriate companies to work with, right? Mm-hmm. So right now we're learning and we're discerning. So you can continue to join our team in prayer around that and pray that our team is able to ask the right questions that need to be asked and to be able to understand the answers as they come in. The second thing that we want to be in prayer for is smooth collaboration with the city and the county officials. We know that they're continuing to do that work, and we're grateful for all that they've been able to do. And so far, it's really good. We're getting ahead of the game on that, and a huge thanks to you, Preston, and to Mike and Betsy and the rest of our team who are working on that. The third thing I would say is to pray around an abiding spirit of unity and patience and joyful expectation. There's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. Mm-hmm. If you want to go far, you go together. And so again, living into that tension of those that want it tomorrow and those that realize it's going to take some time. And so continuing to just have those questions and have grace and patience around this whole process, because it is just that, a process.
Absolutely. And you know, as we continue on this, prayer is not just important here at the beginning, but really inviting people to be partnering with us throughout in prayer. So, Pastor Matt, Preston, thank you all both so much for taking time to pull back the curtain with us today as we have looked behind the curtain to see what's going on with this building team. Your oversight, your wisdom, and heart for Christ Church are such a blessing to this entire congregation. So, on behalf of the congregation, thank both of you. To our listeners, remember that our next formal building committee meeting is set right now for August the 11th at 5:30 p.m. Be in prayer for that. The committee will be reviewing site visit takeaways and refining some of these RFQs that we've been looking at, trying to make a draft during that next session. Please keep that date on your calendar as a reminder to pray for us that day. If you want to view the full campaign, financial updates, read our monthly newsletter, submit a question, all that is available at www.christchurchbg.org/build. Building a lasting home for ministry is a marathon, not a sprint. We're choosing to focus on doing things right here at the beginning, rather than doing them fast. So thank you for your continued prayers, for your faithful generosity, and your steadfast commitment as we lay this foundation together. Until next month, stay patient, stay expectant, and God bless.